articulate with our lips, they can read our lips.
You are now live.
We are now
live.
Okay.
So for those of you that didn't hear any of the audio, I'm here with my oldest and dearest friend, Doug, who is the artistic director of Broom Street Theatre, who is telling us all about his past history. So, Doug, if you would.
Okay. Grew up in Richmond, Virginia. Was no good at sports, was academically lazy, and my parents, in a desperate search to find something for me, signed me up for kid theater classes when I was about 8. I got cast as Oliver and never looked back. Took one smell of the sawdust and this is it. I'm home. This is my place. So studied theater in college, moved to Chicago, and I planned to follow the, Second City, then SNL, then film stardom, and hopefully a cocaine death before the age of 40. And I got as far as auditioning for Second City. I moved to Madison kind of on a whim and thought I'd be here for a year. It was going to be a transition stop. I had a small child at the time. Madison was a great place to raise a family, so my 1-year transition stop is now going into its 3rd decade.
And was there anything besides wanting to come to a smaller city in Madison? Anything in particular about Madison that you...
Actually, no. Here's the story. So I had a small child, and I was doing the starving actor thing, and I thought, I need to get a real job. My other passion is history. I know, I'll get a graduate degree in history and become a teacher. So I found a grad program that would accept me, which was my first red flag. And I got a year into this program and I realized I'm going to be 6 figures in debt to get myself a $20,000 a year teaching job. This was a dumb idea. And I had a buddy named Darrell Raymer who works for ETC now. He was up here going to grad school, and he was in at the stage of life where he's getting married and buying a house and all that. And so I'm on the phone with Darrell one night, and I'm like, I'm going to quit this grad program at the end of the year. I have no idea what I'm going to do or where I'm going to go. And he's like, why don't you try Madison, Wisconsin? And he told me, you can sleep on my couch. I'll help you find a job, help you find an apartment. I know some people. I'll get you hooked up. And so I unfolded a map because this is pre-internet. And I'm like, where's Madison, Wisconsin? And so, literally it was kind of a chance phone call with an old friend. And I really thought, I'll go to Madison, I'll figure out what I want to do next, and then move on. Turned out I really, it was a great place to raise a family. I met a great community. I started getting involved in theater here. And, I just kind of fell in love with the place. And then
And was your first involvement with Broom Street, or was it with
my
with
first
different
involvement
companies?
was Mercury, and it was with when they were doing the Blitz. So I hadn't done any theater for 6-7 years, and I was working a miserable job, and I'm just not a happy human. And I found madstage.com. And I started looking at auditions, and it was a little bit like, cheating husband. I don't want anybody to see that I miss theater, and what's going on? And so I saw the very first Blitz that Buck Hakes produced for Mercury. And it's like, it's just a 1-day commitment. I can do that. So I got in touch with Buck, and I said, you've never met me. You have no idea who I am. I actually can write, so if you need me. And I talked my way onto the writing team for the very first Blitz. And then I got, that sweet audience laughter in my veins. I'm going to do the second Blitz. And then I wound up producing the 3rd and 4th Blitzes and kind of met a bunch of the Madison theater community and got myself in that way. And then my first Broom Street show was 2006. It was right after Joel Gersman died. And I had always wanted to work at Broom Street, but in the Joel Gersman era, rehearsals were 6 weeks and the runs were 6 weeks.
Right.
And I had small children. I'm like, I can't take 12 weeks. That's just the kids will have mustaches, and they'll be married by the time the end of the run. So I wound up writing a show with roles for both my kids and for my wife at the time, which worked out really well because I get to spend time with the family, bring him in. And my son was hilarious. He was about 8, and he would come to me with these demands. Like, I'd be writing the show, and he'd like, Dad, I want a sword fight. And if I can't have a sword fight, I'm not going to be in your play. So I put in it took place in a bar. It was actually Nick Caprellian's first role in Madison was in that show. And Nick Caprellian had a push broom. My son had a pool cue, and they had a sword fight.
Love it.
Yeah. And then one day at dinner, I used the word hogwash, which my son thought was hilarious. He's like, I want the line hogwash. So I had to find a way to make his character hogwash. But that was my first involvement with Broom Street, was that show.
Wow. Now, did you ever do or have any aspirations to do like improv comedy or stand-up at all? Or was that something that was like not in your wheelhouse?
No, I had done improv. I did, excuse me, after college I lived in Chicago for a while. Mm-hmm. I was at Improv Olympic. I was on a house team with Rich Fulcher, who made a name for himself. And our coach was Adam McKay.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I was hanging out with really good improvisers, and then my first kid came along, and that kind of changed my priorities. But I still work with Monkey Business here in town. At www.monkeybusinessinstitute.com. Shows at the Glass Nickel every Friday and Saturday. Brad Knight will kill me if I don't put that in.
Our corporate sponsor now, so make sure you tune in. So tell us a little bit about your transition from being a writer and a director into actually becoming the artistic director for Broom Street.
So let's see. In 2012, we actually moved back to Chicago for a little bit. There's some marital drama there that I don't want to get into, but we moved back to Chicago for a short time, and I did a couple shows in Chicago as an actor, but I found myself really missing the community in Madison. And I actually had an arrow to the head moment. I wrote a show for Broom Street while I was living in Chicago that Heather Rankin directed. And I wasn't happy with the script, and Heather was like, let's get a room full of actors and have a read through. And this room was like Karen Miller and Bill Bowles and Damon Butler and Kathy Slater. Like it was the Madison All-Stars. Mm-hmm. In Heather, and I whispered to Heather, like, lock the living room door and don't let these people out. And so, and we had this great read through. And they spent longer giving me notes on the script than the read-through took. And, just a room full of really brilliant people. So I got fabulous notes. And on the drive back to Chicago, I'm like, what playwright has this?
Right.
You can get a room with this quality of people and, this wonderful, infinitely flexible little black box space. And that was kind of my... I need to get back to Madison. And like I said, there was some marital drama going on. But I came back to Madison. And it was funny, within a couple weeks of getting back to Madison, I get a call from Heather Rankin, who was artistic director at the time. And she said, my next playwright just flaked on me. Do you have anything in the drawer? And I'm like, well, I've got this screenplay that is a little too stagey to be a good screenplay. We could do that. So that was a play called Sweet William.
That was wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
It really was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
That was one of those magic, I get Kelly Maxwell and Bob Moore and Jamie Englund and Heather Rankin and, some Monkey Biz people like John Stino, Adam Luce. It was just a fabulous cast. And I was like, this is great. I'm home. And then about that time, Heather was starting to look to step down. And there I was.
And did you have any trepidation about that, thinking that you could make that transition from writing and acting and doing that part of it into actually having to like be the helmsman of a company?
In retrospect, I wish I had had trepidation. At the time, there was a lot of bravado there. Like, of course I can add a boatload of administrative tasks and be creative and not sacrifice anything. Ha ha. And if I could go back and have a little talk with 2016 Doug, think about this.
Although, as I was like a lot of the kids that I were in high schools and doing the shows that I would talk to when I was doing my other gig, and saying to them, if an opportunity comes up at that point, don't ever say no to it. It's like, just if it's something you can do without physical harm to yourself or people around you, and it's involved in the theater, you should always say yes. And then even if it's not the best thing that you've done, and that's something you don't want to do ever again, at least you've got that experience.
You've got that.
And you can say, okay, I did that. Not really sure I liked that, but I can have that in my wheelhouse now.
Well, and
knowing that I've done that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great lesson for kids, because they all think you want to be stars. They all want to be the lead in the play. And it's like, yeah, but you need to know how to stage manage. You need to know how to...
You know how to hang a light.
You need to know how to hang it, right. Hang a
Yeah.
light. You need to know all the other things that go on that make you the star of the show.
Yeah.
And it's really important for them. And I think that, I think the kids now, especially the high schools, are doing unbelievable things. And they're the ones that are going to come on to start, being in our community theaters and on our stages. So I think it's a great philosophy for them.
Absolutely. And I think, at a space like Broom Street, where we all wind up wearing 6 different hats.
Exactly.
It's so helpful to have a broad bench of, like, does everybody here know how to hang a light? Could you costume a show if you had to? I think the broader your theater skill set is, the more complete you are as a technician, as an actor, as a director, as a writer.
So that took you at, what would they say, 2016?
2017 was when I officially...
2017. So then things are going along pretty well, and then along comes COVID-19.
The dreaded Rona.
The dreaded years.
Yes.
Just when you're kind of like getting your momentum going.
Yeah.
Everything kind of like comes to a halt. So what happened or what didn't happen at Broom Street during that period?
Well, in a way we were fortunate. So like everybody else, we, like in the middle of a run of a show, like, okay, we're done. And we loaded in the next show thinking, okay, we'll be closed for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And then the set for that show sat there for 6 months before we were finally like, we could take this down now. Yeah. But summer of 2020, we started getting leaks in the roof, like very serious leaks in the roof. So in a way, the timing worked out because we were dark. We didn't have to stop a show or do a show with buckets on the floor. And the community really rallied. I want to thank you, community, for really rallying. We had a very successful fundraiser for a new roof that will hopefully last us the next 25, 30 years. And we were able to do a lot of other technical improvements to the theater. We did some remodeling to our green room space. So we've got a little more space now. Our tech director, Taylor Kokinos, did a lot of work on the booth. So our booth is really much more well-run and efficient and uses our limited space well. Let's see. If you're a inspector for the city, skip ahead like 30 seconds. We completely remodeled the bathrooms.
Nice.
And we might have gotten permit. I don't know. Anyway, but we had room to make one bathroom ADA compliant. We're very pleased about that. Like the bathrooms are in better shape. The roof's in good shape. We made a lot of lighting upgrades, a lot of booth upgrades. So I feel like we used the time pretty well.
And then what happened to the shows that were put on hold? So that we're going to move into what happens when the doors reopen and the curtain re-rises again?
We had a backlog of shows, and let's see, we had a show called The Guest Book, which is the one that had the set sitting there by Gina Gomez. And our director for that had moved out of town. So a little bit of recasting, got a new director. Our current show, It's All Overboard, was queued up for spring, summer of 2020. Now we're finally getting to it in 2023. So yeah, there's still a couple shows that were in the hopper for 2020 that I'd really like to get on the schedule. And it's been tough. 2022, we sort of felt like we were back to producing a regular schedule. And then it felt like every single show, somebody'd get COVID. We'd have to cancel a weekend. We'd have to move it by a weekend. And pre-COVID, had kept a very tight schedule. 4-week run, 2-week tech, another 4-week run. We're trying to get in 8 to 10 shows a year. 2022 kind of humbled us a little bit because you move this show by a week, and then these 2 shows have to move, and then that makes this show open on Thanksgiving, and so now our calendar's a little less ambitious with a little more buffer time between shows just to allow us to move around like that. But yeah, there are still a couple of shows that there's a great show by Coleman that I really want to get going. That we just need to get back on the stage.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit more about It's All Overboard, because you're in production now, right?
We are in production now. We're running tonight and then next weekend, so 4 more shows. It's All Overboard is by Lisa Sipos, directed by Maria Damon. It's a very funny cruise ship comedy about a little bit of a romantic attraction between political opposites. And then there's some intrigue, and the two have to team up to help a fellow passenger.
And is the playwright local to Madison?
The playwright is local to Madison, yeah, Lisa Sipos.
And is this her first piece, or has she done something else beside this?
This is her second piece. In 2018, she did a show called Menace to Society, A Mormon in Milwaukee. And that was a show that I directed, actually.
I missed that. I would have loved to have seen that.
Oh, that was a wonderful show. That was, Lisa grew up Mormon and has left the church, but still has family in the church. And this play was sort of her working through the process of how do you leave that insular little bubble even when you love the people and love some things about the tight-knit culture, but really just can't abide other things about the tight-knit culture.
Wow, fascinating. And so you opened this in the middle of April, her current one. It's all over, right? And you still have how many shows?
4 more shows.
4 more shows. And are there all like local Broom Street regulars in the show, or do you have some newbies around?
It's a nice mix. We got a few regulars, a few folks who are coming back after not having been on the stage for a few years, and a few like this is their first or second Broom Street shows. So it's a nice mix. It's a very funny cast.
I love it. And then, so what's on the docket for after this production?
After this, coming in June, is An Evening of the Absurd, written and directed by Matt Grabowski.
Love it.
Yeah.
And is this your life story?
We don't Every day is an evening of the absurd. Yeah, it's the kind of thing that you could only do at Broom Street. And Matt used to work with Broom Street 20-ish years ago, and I still have fond memories of shows he did in like the 90s and early 2000s. So I'm thrilled to have him back. And it's just, you're either going to love the Evening of the Absurd or you're going to leave going, huh? What was that?
That's kind of the Broom Street trademark, though.
I
isn't it?
know. I'm thrilled to have. We're kind of back in our wheelhouse.
And that's actually one of the most amazing things about Broom Street. After all the years and all the different incarnations and different people at the helm, that it's always kept that little bit of like, you never know what you're going to see. It's usually always original, right? Mm-hmm. And you either walk in there thinking that's the best thing I've ever seen, or you walk a stretch and you go, what was that? What did I just watch here? But that's no other company that I can think of has that kind of reputation, has continued that reputation, and makes that work.
I mean, we are so fortunate that we own the building outright. So we don't have a mortgage payment. And actually, because the building is, back behind houses, it's such a weird little lot. Like property taxes, it's not worth that much on paper. So it's we own it outright. It's cheap to run, which means we don't worry. Like, I never think about box office when I'm selecting a show for the season, which is such a luxury.
Sure.
Like, if I like it and it will appeal to a niche audience of 6 people, great. Okay. But I want to see it. So let's put it on. And that's just not a luxury that many other companies have.
Oh, very few have that luxury.
Yeah.
And I also love the fact that you've also continued to pass the hat at the shows, because there's no other companies that, they either pay them or they don't pay them. Mm-hmm. It's one or the other. It's like there's no in between, which is what I had, whoop-de-doo. I really, wanted to make sure that I at least gave people some money to know their value was in making a show, to pay them something. So it's and I think your audiences appreciate the fact that keep your ticket prices affordable.
Yeah.
And if you have a few extra bucks in your pocket, throw it in the hat and throw it in the till and
throw it in the actors box. That little box that the actors split at the end of the show. The actors will be very upset with me if I don't tell you that there's an actor's box clearly labeled at the exit of the theater. Bring cash.
So down the line, now that things are kind of like, hopefully on an even keel.
Yeah.
What do you see happening in your participation with the company, or will you want to go back to writing more or producing, directing?
I would love to go back to writing more. And I'm the sort of writer that I need to go into a tunnel and not, momentum is a very fragile thing. And if I get to, act 1, scene 2, I'm doing well. And then I have to deal with something else. I get thrown off easily. So my hope in the coming year, 2 years, is to get back to writing, maybe find ways to take a little bit of the administrative load off of myself, because I miss writing. I haven't, and this was something that Heather warned me about when I took the job. She said that, just so you know, I haven't written a show since I took this job. And in my foolish bravado, I'll be fine. I'll be churning out masterworks. And the administrative kind of day-to-day, I found it very hard to do any serious writing, and I miss it.
You have a board of directors, right? Is
Yes.
it a working board, or is it just a board like in name only because you have to have a board?
No, it's a working board.
So do any of those people fulfill any of those obligations or duties that would take that off your plate?
They do some of that. It's a little bit, if you look back at the history of the theater, when it was Joel Gersman's theater, it was Joel Gersman.
Right.
He was the chief cook and bottle washer. And that organizational structure where it's sort of all the artistic director has to some extent persisted to this day. It's a lot better now than it was, even under Callan Hardy or under Heather Rankin. It's gotten better. I'd like to continue evolving it to where I think it's a little like we said with if you get more involved with lighting and costuming and sets, you're a better theater artist. I think the more people who are involved with marketing and publicity and fundraising and just the theater calendar and all the little logistical things, I think the deeper bench we have of people doing that kind of work can only help the theater. in addition to selfishly like taking some of that off of me. So we're working in that direction, and that's an evolution that has been very positive over the years, and I think we'll continue to move in that direction.
And now, when's the next musical?
Hey, Kelly Maxwell and Megan Rose, authors of Held.
Yes, please.
Yeah, you both told me that you'd like to do another musical. Huh? If another musical shows up, I'd be thrilled. So
Now, in further going down your path of making your wishes come true, where do you see the theater in about 5 years, 5 to 10 years, maybe the next decade of Broom Street?
That's a tough question, because the answer to that is I'd like to see us still doing what we're doing, the kind of local, original, weird, experimental theater. I think the other valuable function we provide is we're a lot of people's first show they directed or first show they wrote. We will take a chance on somebody who's never written or directed a show before. And so I never want to lose that. And of course, we'll still be at 1119 Williamson Street. It's not on Broom Street. It's at 1119 Williamson, and it's tucked in behind some houses. So if you don't see it, it's there.
So the $1 million question is: has it ever been on Broom Street?
No. No.
I love that. People say, "Oh, well, it started out on Broom Street." No, it didn't.
Well, they had rented a space on Broom Street, and the city looked at it, and it was like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. There's one exit that locks from the outside. Like, no, you can't effing do a play here. And so they were itinerant for about 7 years until they found the place on Willie. So it has never. One of these years, I want to just stop traffic on Broom Street and do a play in the middle of the street, just to
crosswalk musicals,
or Antigone, or Oedipus, or crosswalk musicals, just something, just to say we did a show on Broom Street.
And it's also a tribute to how iconic it is that you've kept the name Broom Street Theater.
Oh, yeah.
And people always think, well, it's not on Broom Street. Why do you call it that? But it's become, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I had a woman audition for me one time, and I offered her the role, and she was like, well, I'm not going to accept the role because I thought it was on Broom Street, but I don't want to drive all the way to the east side. And I'm like, you can throw a baseball from the Capitol and hit what do you drive all the way to the east side?
She could walk from Broom Street to Willie Street in less time than it would take her to drive from the west side wherever she was living.
Especially with the construction.
Yeah, totally. And what about you? Where do you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years?
Let's see. I mean, I will still be in Madison. I will still be. I hope to be writing. I would really like to sit down and focus and kind of restart the writing. So I probably will not have the title I have now. I think it's healthy for an organization to cycle leaders. I think if you do what Joel Gersman did and stay in the job for 35 years, you kind of can't help getting a little stale. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Broom Street will kind of always be my artistic home. It's weird. It's the fact that it's so limiting. It's that tiny little black box stage is kind of what makes it so flexible, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's like the TARDIS. It's so much bigger on the inside. But, the show now, it's set on a cruise ship. We've got a beautiful mural on the back wall of the bow of a ship and a gorgeous sunset. And somehow it's beautifully spacious, and you forget you're sitting in a 30-foot by 40-foot room with 50 other people. We did Nottingham, which was a Robin Hood play, and we sort of magically got all of Sherwood Forest in there. Ingrid Kallick did these beautiful wall murals.
Oh, I love Ingrid's work. Oh, man, what a treasure.
Fabulous. Yeah.
What a treasure.
Yeah.
And plus, the improvements have been great, because back in the day when it was those, bench seats and no air conditioning, it was like, who wants to go and and suffer through that?
Yeah.
But people the diehards still did it. But now it's actually, it's a pleasure. Like you say, you transform that space into a really nice theater space, and it can become whatever you want to, and
it's comfortable.
And it's comfortable, which is what you kind of want to be when you're going to sit through a show in the theater.
Yeah. It's All Overboard, by the way, is a nice tight 90 minutes. So good like early spring summer show. I got a call like 2-3 years ago from somebody who was like, I want to come see the show. Do you still have those awful benches? I know the benches have been gone for 15 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now, since you've come back from the years that shall not be named, have you had any desire? Have you worked with any other theater company besides Broom Street?
I have not, and I'd like to. Because Broom Street is so all-consuming. That's something else. If I wind up stepping away from this particular title at Broom Street, that frees me up to go to the Savvy Yards and audition for the Modern Major General.
There you go. I can see it.
That's the one role on my bucket list.
I can totally see it. Excellent. Is there anything else that we can promote for you, or?
Oh, I want to
talk about.
Let's talk about the pay what you can ticketing.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I don't know how to explain this in a way that's not confusing.
Okay.
But we put a block of seats online for every show. It's like a traditional, you go, you put down your credit card, you pay, you've got your reservation. We keep about half the seats open for walk-ups. And those are pay what you can. And so if you're in a situation where you can't afford, the $22 online is too much, give us $1, give us a quarter. I want people in the seats who want to see the shows. And again, because we're in such a fortunate financial position, we keep our costs low. Like, you give me $1, you can come see the show. We're happy to have you. But people look online and they see sold out, and they think, oh, I can't go.
Oh.
And so we've sort of got two different queues. We've got the online queue, and then we very deliberately limit the number of seats we're selling online so that people are free to walk up and do the pay what you can. So if you look online and you see that a Broom Street show is sold out, it's not sold out. We have a seat for you. Show up at the theater. If it's a hot ticket, which It's All Overboard is, we've been selling really well. Come a little early, hang out in the driveway. If you're first in line, you get the first seat. But the pay what you can seats are totally different than the reservation seats. And I have tried, on the website, on our publicity, to explain this, and it's a weird model. And
nobody else does that.
Nobody else does it. It's kind of a unique model.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult because when you see sold out, you think, well, there aren't any tickets.
Oh, I'm not going.
Yeah, why would I go? Because it says right there, it's sold out, not knowing that you have that block of tickets being held. Yeah. And speaking of which, what is your capacity? Or does it fluctuate with show because of the configuration?
It's usually when we do the 3 bleacher configuration, it's about 55. And we still do have a bench in the top row. So we've been known to cram a couple extra. If we got a really hot show, we'll cram You get to know the person sitting next to you very, very well.
And why not?
Exactly. That's what the community is.
Well,
the
that's
community
right.
theater.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's live theater.
Exactly.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, please go and see, it's all overboard. Go and see anything that's at Broom Street Theatre. Go and see anything that this gentleman writes because he is an artistic genius. And I say that with all honesty because I've enjoyed everything that I've seen that you've done, whether you're acting in it or whether you've written it. And I thank you for coming on this blustery, chilly winter spring day.
That we're both dressed.
And we're both dressed, we're ready for summer. Please, please.
I want to break out the Beach Boys records.
Exactly. So thank you again. Go see Broom Street Theater. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my husband Jim, and thank you to Ben, and thank you to Mads Theater, and we will see you in 2 weeks.